Hello, welcome everybody to the Zest Wellness webinar. We're just going to give a few more moments for anyone else who needs to log in. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Zest Wellness webinar. My name is Karen Kushner, and I'm joined today by Nathan Kolar. Nathan and I are both part of Colonial Group International's Zest Wellness team. Thank you for taking the time to join us for a discussion around the secret to health and happiness. Before we get started with the presentation, we want to share with you how you can connect with the Zest Wellness program online. We are always sharing new content around health and well-being on our social media platforms, and we would love to have you join the conversation. Just so you know, today's session is designed to be both informative and interactive. We will be sharing some questions throughout, so feel free to participate in the chat section. If you have any other questions during the webinar, please post them to the questions section, and we will reserve time at the end to answer. So now I will go ahead and turn it over to Nathan to get us started on the secret to health and happiness. Okay.
Awesome, Karen. Thank you for the introduction and hello to everyone who's joining us. We definitely thank you for your time. So what we'll be chatting about today, we have an hour time slot together. And what we're chatting about is a pillar of health called social wellness. And so kind of how we're going about that is we're going to highlight a really interesting study that's been done out of Harvard. And this is actually one of the longest running studies in the whole world. So much so that normally when research studies are taking place, kind of funding becomes an issue and studies stop after a couple of years. But this study's been going on for 80 years, and it's been funded by the National Institute of Health, then the National Institute of Mental Health, and then the National Institute of Aging. So you can just see how many years this study has been going for and how many different funding platforms have been used, which really highlight the importance of what this study is all about. And so this slide shows an overall summary of what we're going to be chatting about. We can see on the left-hand side right here, how this study came about is that what the researchers were looking for is they're trying to find out what predicts health and well-being later in life. What health variable is it? Is it exercise? Is it relationships? Is it nutrition? What is it about health that can really predict how we'll kind of turn out later in life? And when this study started, of course, we're talking when the study started in the late 1930s, the principal belief was that it must be genetics, or it must be how smart someone is. So it was really these physical traits that everyone thought would be what predicts health and happiness later on. Many of the researchers would look at individuals' organ function. They even look at the measurement of different individual skulls. And so at the time, it was for sure that health was all about our physical appearance or our physical traits or our genes. What the right-hand side of this slide shows is that what they did find out, kind of high-level summaries, is that loneliness is not good. And so we know, of course, smoking and alcohol abuse isn't good, but so is loneliness. And so very important to kind of keep that in mind. In addition to that, our our traits like empathy and kindness really do matter, and we'll find out that matters in terms of our relationships, and that self-care really is important. And that sounds so simple, but what's simple isn't always easy. And so keep in mind these three different findings right here as we go along. So we'll just kind of take a step back and to really highlight why this study was so interesting and how exactly it worked out. And so what these researchers did is, for a number of men, just over 700, is that they had two different groups. The one group, which we'll classify as a part of the grant study, was a number of individuals from Harvard College. At the time, these were known to be, the highlights of the class, the best and the brightest students. And in fact, they included previous American President John F. Kennedy. And so on one hand, you have these Harvard graduates. On the other hand, you have these inner city Boston boys. And so you can see these two groups really reflect two different ends of the social spectrum. You have who people have thought were the brightest in these Harvard students, and then you had what people, a group that people would kind of brush to the side, and people who are from a lower socioeconomic status, so these inner city boys, who one might consider as poor. Now, what these researchers would do is that over time they wanted to find out all these different health variables, which is the one that predicts health and wellness and happiness later in life. Was it our sleep patterns? Was it if we smoked or not? What about alcohol consumption? Was it certain types of medicine? Was it our friendships? And really kind of key in on that friendships aspect. Was it our political views? Was it our careers? Was it our marriages? What was it about health, and what is it about health that really can help us in the long run in terms of our quality of life and in terms of our happiness? Of course, researchers had a number of objective measures, like they looked at medical records over time, they looked at all these different medical exams and brain scans, but they also had some of these different subjective factors, like they would interview participants over time, and they administer questionnaires. And when we think why that's important is because self-reported health actually is an extremely important variable, because those who might report a poor self-reported level of health, so the way they actually thought about their health, and actually different studies, those individuals were the ones that their health was severely compromised over time. And so yes, of course, we want absolute numbers with objective measures, but those subjective measures with those interviews and those questionnaires were very interesting, and that's what these researchers were do over time. Ever since the study started to present day, because this study is still going on, researchers every couple years would look at these different methods and administer these different tests to the participants.
Okay, so our first question. In all of our research on this topic, we came across a useful tool called the happiness list. So to start your happiness list, you write down a few things that always improve your mood when you're feeling down. And then you keep that list handy so you can refer back to it whenever you need a boost. So everybody can take a moment to share something from your happiness list in the chat box, and we'll read them out and share them with everybody. For me, I know taking my dog for a long walk outside, getting some fresh air always gives me a boost. Nathan, how about you?
Yeah, for myself, it's two things predominantly. One of them being, of course, spending time with the dog, and his name's Cody. He's a schnoodle, so a schnauzer and a poodle. But also spending time with my friends, and so I have a number of friends who are very ambitious in terms of, some of my friends are trying to begin music careers and whatnot. So kind of spending time with them and their contagious energy rubbing off on me, that's what really helps me feel optimistic and happy.
Oh, great. That sounds so nice. We have another answer from the chat box. Somebody suggests listening to music, which is a great idea. And similar to this happiness list, always keeping it on hand, you could even make a playlist that you know will get you in a certain mood if you listen to it. Someone else says walks on the beach. I know we all have the great opportunity to do that in the colonial jurisdictions. Okay, great answers. So we'll move back into the presentation, but feel free to take some time after this to start your own happiness list.
Awesome, Karen. So yeah, let's keep going. And so far we talked about what the study was all about and some really cool details. And now we'll kind of go right into a lot of the findings with the study. And of course, researchers found a number of different correlations. So what they found is that if someone, looking at the first point here, if someone is physically active, they're more likely to have a more positive aging and happiness experience. And same goes for if that person had the absence of alcohol abuse, was a non-smoker, maintained a healthy weight. Interestingly enough, had the ability to cope with different life's ups and downs, but probably most interestingly, a stable marriage. And so you can see some very cool findings here. And so, yeah, I think everyone coming into this webinar, we would all believe that numbers 1 to 4 make intuitive sense. We know if someone exercises, if they maintain a healthy weight, of course they're going to have more positive health later on. But it's also interesting that across all these different tests that these researchers were doing, across all these different men from the two groups, these correlations that they're finding with both these groups are that these factors are what lead to positive health and aging. And so our presentation from here on out will kind of zoom in to point number 6 right there, and in terms of all social relationships, and we'll also touch on point 5 in terms of coping abilities too. And even a side positive finding was that education is related to health and longevity as well. So kind of the more educated someone is, whether that be through formal education or self-education, the more likely someone is to make more positive, healthy choices over time. And so another kind of final point about this slide is that it's really interesting how all of these different factors, 1 through 6, are all within our control. They're all lifestyle factors. And we say that because it's easy with health to think, oh, if that person has genetics, or genetics isn't as favorable in my family and whatnot. But when we really look at each of these factors, no matter what someone's genetics are, they do have the potential to control each of these factors and kind of have control of their destiny, so to say. So really keep that in mind, that yes, genes do play a part in health, and we're not going against that by any means, but we're also trying to highlight that no matter if someone is from that Harvard group of men who were the best and the brightest, those men who were from the inner city, both those groups, these positive correlations existed. And there's merit in determining genetics, but also we have control of each of these factors. And so another slide that really highlights that finding as well, and I know that at first glance this slide might seem very, very overwhelming, but we'll just kind of zone in on the parts that I mentioned. First part here being that ancestral longevity, so your family history related to genetics. You can see that your ancestral longevity for your later on in life, it really does not necessarily predict all those different factors of health, everything from physical to mental health to how satisfied you are with your life as well. And same with those childhood experiences and the social class of your parents and socioeconomic status. You can see that, it's easy to listen to popular media and to pop culture about these factors, probably predicting health and wellness, but in reality, when you look at these scientific studies, they don't. And so it's really interesting how this study proves that things like these different childhood factors, they don't necessarily always relate to health later on. And so that just brings home the point that no matter what your upbringing was, no matter what social class, no matter what family history, what genes you have, you still have the ability to take control of your health. And so now when we kind of look at that bottom table, we can see that, of course, smoking, alcohol abuse, exercise, all of those factors in midlife around age 50, with all those factors, you can see what their relationship is with those different aspects of health. Again, physical health, mental health, life satisfaction, length of active life. But you can also see that in addition to smoking, alcohol abuse, and exercise, look at that one that shows up, a stable marriage. And we'll realize later, not only stable marriage, but also just relationships in general, friendships, relationship with coworkers, neighbors, relationships within your community. Even that then predicts these health factors, even mental health, which is absolutely mind-boggling, right? That things that are non-tangible in nature, so things like relationships, can really play a factor in our health later on. Just some phenomenal findings that hopefully can really drive the point home for everyone, in that we have this new way of thinking now where happiness and health is not about owning the latest computer or the latest iPhone or having that brand new pair of jeans. It's not about IQ and what someone scored in a test and what their intellectual intelligence is. It's not how much Instagram or Facebook friends that someone has. It's not whether you drive the latest car or have the most money in your bank account. And so what we really have to emphasize is that it's our relationships, and especially our relationships in midlife, that can really predict healthy aging. There's a really interesting finding and a book that came out, as well as a documentary called Blue Zones. And so blue zones are areas in the world where people tend to live the longest. One of these areas, for example, is a city in Japan called Okinawa. And so when researchers looked at this city, and they looked at why are people from this population, why are they living so long? What is it about? Is it their genetics? What is it about this population that has led to such positive health for them? And what researchers found out, among many factors, but one of them being is that these individuals, their sense of connectedness, so the relationships within their community, very strong ties, not only family life, but also friends and those who surround themselves in their community. So hopefully that's a real kind of eye opener for everyone, and really nicely emphasizes that things like kindness, empathy, being patient and respectful, these life skills, which then feed into our relationships, then feed into our health as well. And so we can see that even when we compare relationships and whatnot with things like cholesterol levels, this study, this Harvard study, actually mentions that satisfaction with relationships at age 50 is a better predictor of physical health than cholesterol levels. And I read that slide word for word on purpose because I think that's extremely powerful words right there, and just really emphasizes that your relationships now, and especially at midlife, pay dividends later on. And so maybe that's also why health is so difficult, right? Because the things you do today, if you're nice to someone today, or if you go for coffee with a friend, or if you go with your son or daughter to the park to play after work, it's hard to imagine that having an effect on your life later on. But we all know that health isn't always that instant gratification, and that it does take that sense of being proactive and really setting the foundation with these choices now, that we will see these positive effects later on. And so just some fantastic ideas on a new way of thinking for all of us. And now when we dive a little bit deeper into our findings in terms of the relationships And I'm just trying to switch the slide right now, so a quick pause for everyone. And then if Karen, if you can help me switch the slide, it doesn't seem to be switching on our end.
How about now, Nathan?
There we go. So just a deeper finding into relationships and health and happiness. We can see that those who have strong relationships, of course, most obviously from this study, are more likely to live longer and become healthier. And why that is the case is because they can help mitigate things like depression, dementia, diabetes, and heart disease. And so, of course, linked to that too is that over time, stronger relationships, not necessarily more relationships, but stronger relationships can lead to less of a mental deterioration in terms of our brain tissue, and of course, that leading into less of a memory decline. When you are positive relationships, we see the third point here being our physical health is stronger over time. And then probably on a personal note, my favorite point from this slide is the have reduced emotional and associated physical pain. And why this is the case is because for participants of the study across both those groups of gentlemen, those who were most happy with their relationships when they were 80 would actually say that on days that their physical pain would be higher than usual, because of course with aging you have days that are a little bit more tougher than others, their moods did not suffer. And so you're getting older, but your mood isn't suffering. And why that is the case for these gentlemen is because as they were getting older, they kind of had their relationships in their life to talk about these things with people, that way they can kind of keep a peace of mind as they're going through these natural processes of aging. And so they're chatting with people, and then that's how they're keeping with their mood, and they're not having all these emotional signs of anger. Of course, I think we're all interested in earning more at peak salaries. So you can see individuals who have stronger relationships have earned more on average at their peak salaries. And then as well, on a really cool note about this is that those who have stronger relationships, it allows their nervous system to relax. And so of course that could mean that when you're going through something, if you have someone to share that with and someone to kind of help you through that process, it leads to less chronic stress in your life. And it's just really important because there's a kind of a really interesting but really unfortunate statistic too, where 1 in 5 Americans are actually lonely. And so knowing now what we know about social relationships in our life, when we hear that 1 in 5 Americans are lonely, it really makes us ask the question of, instead of always telling these individuals and people in life in general, go to the gym, go exercise, go eat healthier, maybe we should also be telling them, hey, when was the last time you called a good friend in your life? Or when was the last time you went out and participated in something in your community? Because we know that these things can really have interesting impacts in terms of our nervous system, in terms of our physical health, our memory over time. So some fantastic findings from the study here.
Okay, so Nathan has thoroughly explained the importance of strong relationships. And something else that we know is that having support and accountability in your wellness goals makes you more likely to succeed. So, we'd like to give you all the chance to share some of the healthy activities that you enjoy doing with your friends. If you can share that in the chat section, we will call them out again. We have an answer from Brett, who says he likes to exercise with his friends. Someone else says they like to go bowling, so you might not think of that as a healthy activity, but you're up and active, you're having a great time. Going to the movies, something else that you can do with your friends. Be sure to pack those healthy snacks. Just another moment if anyone else would like to answer. See, talking and catching up is something as simple as that. You can go meet up for a coffee, or you can go for a nice walk and talk. And someone else says cooking, an awesome healthy activity to enjoy with your friends. Okay, thank you all so much for those answers.
Awesome, Karen. I loved that poll question for everyone to contribute. And so a couple more fun slides we got going here, and then some we keep emphasizing, because when we present these findings, and we mention this Harvard study, we mention how what's really cool and then fascinating is how these relationships really predict health later in life. It's easy to listen to that right away and to think, okay, I'm gonna go and meet more people, or you might lose hope because you don't think that you have a lot of close friends, let's say. But what's really emphasized by the researchers of the study is that it is quality over quantity. And so if our quality of relationships, even if it's not a high number of relationships, it's really that quality of the relationships that do matter. And when we think about the relationships, why does quality matter? How do we kind of get there? Is that vulnerability within a relationship. So really opening yourself up to others is a key factor. Being yourself, of course, being authentic, because with relationships, what researchers mentioned is that if you can count on each other when the going gets tough, that is what truly matters. Researchers would interview different couples in their 80s, and these couples could bicker back and forth all day, but the couples who knew that they could really count on each other in hard times, and their memories reflect that, those relationships were still health promoting. And so, I think sometimes we all have those friend relationships where it's friendly teasing others, and that's totally okay and fun, because sometimes in those relationships, that when times get tough, you can still rely on those people, and they can rely on you. And so that's what really matters. Researchers also emphasize that it's not only relationships with a significant other or relationships for a marriage, but also relationship with your friends, coworkers, neighbors. If you're involved with different teams and hobbies, people who you live near, and people who you bypass on your way to work, those acquaintances. It's really all these different types of people in your life that do play an impact on the structure and strength of your relationships. And as what previous slides have shown, is that even if in your past life, or even if right now you're thinking that, okay, perhaps I can kind of invest more in my friends and invest more in the relationships in my life, you can change. Personalities aren't set right at birth all the time, and no matter if your childhood was more lonely, or if you were moving while you were a child and were able to meet too many people, the choices you make now and those choices that you control are, my point being, are within your control. And so researchers even found that individuals who had more of a rougher upbringing, and who were more so took part in excessive drinking even in their 20s, were able to turn their life around, create successful careers, and really have a nice foundation of relationships in their life. Kind of vice versa, where even individuals who had the best and the brightest of childhoods, like that Harvard group, their decisions later in life can kind of go backwards, and so they can spiral in a negative sense. So everything that we're talking about is within our control. and it really leaves some positive hope for all of us in the future, because maintaining the status of your relationships is an ongoing process. One more note in the slide, a really interesting note, is that when we talk about relationships with coworkers, there's an idea about how the relationship someone has with their manager is actually more important than the relationship that person has with their physician, because it's your manager who you're seeing on a regular basis. It's your manager who might be the barrier for you even going to that physician in the first place. And so it's nice how it reminds us all that our relationships in the workplace, and for those of us who are in more so of a managerial positions, we do have an impact on the health of our employees. And as we move on here, we'll do a really cool slide we want to include, because we did mention that this study is still going to this day. And so now what this study is looking at is for all those children of the original group of men, they're now looking at their children and kind of taking a deeper dive into childhood factors for happiness and aging. And as well, since if anyone's listening picked up on the fact that the original study was all males, they did start including females a few years ago, and as time goes by, they'll get more data on females who are now included in the study, because the researchers were able to look at different childhood experiences, but if they can take a deeper dive into childhood experiences and maybe even look at childhood experiences in the sense of prenatal, so before the baby is born, and the health of that baby while that baby is in the womb, then it's factors like that could play an impact on someone's health later on. So it's fascinating how this study is still going on, and how it expanded to taking a deeper look at children, and as well as just starting to include females in the last few years. Now, what's awesome for all of us is that we have some really cool take-home points, because the last thing we want to avoid is the jacuzzi effect. Because how many of us have listened to a webinar or listened to a video of some sort, and we're listening and we get really excited and we want to make a change in our life, but then as soon as we log off that computer, we get cold again. So we're in the jacuzzi right now, and then walk away and we get cold. We have no kind of tangible action items. We have no practicality. But what we're doing right now with this slide is we're making sure that jacuzzi is hot for the rest of our lives. We're never leaving this jacuzzi right now. So I hope everyone is wearing a very comfortable bathing suit, because we're not leaving this jacuzzi. And so why we say that is because in terms of connecting with others, time. So if we can make this a priority for us, we can really have some dividends for us later on. And so first and foremost, we need to create time to connect with others. And as well, I think being present in our conversations with others is important, especially at things like the dinner table. So, sometimes it's unfortunate when you're out for dinner, and whether it's yourself or your family or your friends, or you see someone at another table and they're on their phones. That kind of defeats the whole purpose of this, of course, right? So if we can be present and aware of the moment when we're with others, that awareness can play a strong factor for us. In doing so, we want to think twice before skipping time with others. It's easy to say that we can't go out tonight because of our workload, or because we want to watch that TV show, but we do know that time is probably the most important factor for us, and we do want to think twice before skipping time with others. In terms of where we can meet people, because we're not only is it our marriages or our friends or our family that are important for predicting our health and happiness over time, but it's also things like our acquaintances, and how we can go about that is through volunteering in our community, attending community events, being a part of sports teams, and we can really put ourselves out there. There's another really cool line of thinking with life, and that's it goes, a desk is a dangerous place to see the world. And so if you're always behind a desk and or behind a table or behind a TV, it really is a dangerous place to see the world, because that can affect your health in a negative way. But what if on a Saturday morning we can more often just go to the coffee shop, grab a coffee, hang out for a little bit? Possibly over time we start establishing some people who we see on a common basis, and all of a sudden we have a community at that coffee shop we go to, and those people end up being our social connections, and those are the people that are then they're saving your life over time when you really think about it. So a really different way of thinking. One of our earlier slides showed as well was our coping techniques with stress over time. And so uh, having outlets having outlets and wanting to see our friends over time and connect with others can really be a positive coping technique for us. Our perspective also matters too. So remembering that life is short, and when we're here for a limited amount of time, and so we do want to focus on the positives, and we do want to make the most of each moment. It is glass half full, not glass half empty. And so optimism and remembering that we got one life was extremely important for our perspective. And it's okay that relationships can sometimes be difficult. And so we saw researchers, when they would interview couples in their 80s, as was mentioned earlier, these couples could bicker all the time, but if they really knew deep down inside that they could depend on each other, that's what really mattered. And so it's that notion of bend but don't break. And so things might get rough and difficult, but the sun will rise again, and it's okay that relationships are not perfect. An interesting factor that researchers found was that since they tracked individuals through such a long period of time in their lives, they really interacted with individuals during retirement. And so retirement is a very, very interesting time, because of course your whole social structure changes. You go from people who you were used to seeing all the time in your life to suddenly things are different now. You don't see those people as much. So what researchers found was that those individuals who they would interview and do these medical tests on, who had positive health and levels of happiness, what they did in retirement is that they really kind of replaced their workmates with other social networks. So these individuals went from being a part of their employee community to then joining hobbies and local sports teams, and those became their new social networks. During retirement, individuals they gain a new appreciation of the small things in life, and they rediscovered how to play and how to simply have fun and enjoy the beach and enjoy the sunshine and enjoy a simple walk, because it's those creative endeavors, those hobbies that people oftentimes overlook, and that ability to get lost sometimes, right? To go visit a new place, explore the unknown, and especially doing that with a friend, with a significant other. It's when you can do those things together that can really strengthen your relationship. And what a better way to do all of this than to learn new things and to keep moving forward. Boredom, just like loneliness, what if boredom kills us as well? And if we can keep moving forward, learn new things, and bring others along while we do that, that's what really emphasizes and helps us with the quality of our relationships. One final point about positive coping as well, to really highlight that one again as we finalize this slide. A really interesting quote for everyone, if they want to write this one down. It's really powerful, and that is this: it's not about what happens to you that matters, but how you take it. And so when you really think about it, most things that happen in life, they're only important because you make them important, right? They might not be important to that person on the street, but they're only important because you make it important. And so in reality, those things are almost neutral, but what makes these things stressful sometimes is our response to them. And it's not the thing itself, is our response to that thing, how we interpret that thing, and thing just being an overall broad term. And so with relationships in our life and those people we can really count on, it helps with this positive coping, because like we said, and we're going to say it again, it's not about what happens to you that matters, but how you take it.
That's great. Thanks for that, Nathan. So moments ago, Nathan mentioned the importance of relationships with your managers and in the workplace. And support at work is really key to maintaining a healthy lifestyle. We're there for most of the day, so we want to have support of our coworkers. So we wanted to know, what are some ways that your workplace helps you reach your health goals? Again, you can type that into the chat section and we will share your answers. Our first answer from Jacqueline, flexible work days. So that's great. Being able to prioritize your time out of work, not being tied to your desk all day. Oh, we've had someone else say the Zest Wellness app. That is why we're here, and happy to hear that you're enjoying that. Millicent has said that her company sponsors gym memberships. So that's great. So your employer realizes that keeping you healthy will keep you a productive employee. Excellent. Okay, thank you for those who answered. Like I said, we have had people answer that the Zest Wellness program is offered at their workplace. We're so happy to hear that you're enjoying it, and we're happy to be able to provide the tools and programs that you can use to track your well-being. For those of you who would like to know more about Colonial's Zest Wellness program, we launched over 10 years ago now, and over that time, we've evolved from a traditional well-being program focused on health measurements, diet and exercise, to a fully integrated strategic program that engages our members on a daily basis. So with our partners and our vendor network in each of our jurisdictions, what we're able to do is help individuals build sustainable habits that ensure that they're feeling their best, and therefore they're able to give their best performance at work. So as I just mentioned, Zest Wellness is focused on providing holistic wellness solutions, which includes supporting members' social well-being. So we have these great programs on this slide that all tie into our social pillar. So the first being the friends and family feature, which I'll go into a bit more details on our next slide. We also offer the Zest Wellness fitness classes, wellness in the park events, that what these do is bring community members together to educate, to get a good sweat session going, and to really emphasize that social connection. We also offer quarterly team challenges, so it allows you to connect with your colleagues through some healthy competition. And we all want to be the best, right? So it's really satisfying to see your name up there on the leaderboard. So the friends and family feature, what this does is it allows our members to invite up to 10 friends and family members to join Zest Wellness. Our members love the program so much that they want to get their loved ones involved and active too. So it's really easy to do. All you'll need to do is go to the Friends page of your Zest Wellness account and click Friends outside your company, and you just enter their email address, and they'll click that email, get signed up, and you can enjoy that healthy competition with people outside of work. And then we also wanted you to be aware of a promotion we're running to get your colleagues involved as well. So you can invite your work friends, and That will allow you to earn 50 points each for inviting up to 5 friends to join the Zest Wellness program.
Karen, I love how Zest certainly emphasizes the ability for employees to interact with each other and therefore develop strong relationships, because we know those employees who have that positive workplace culture, those employees that will obtain those benefits later on in life, right?
Absolutely.
And so for everyone with us on the webinar call, some really cool take home points for all of us, some three valuable points are that quality relationships really are a path to health and happiness. And not only are we talking about relationships with as far as marriage and family, but also just acquaintances in our life. We really, everyone who we surround ourselves with does have an impact on our happiness and health. There's another interesting quote that's along the lines of, you are the product of the 5 closest people in your life. And so another quote that really emphasizes the power of who you surround yourself with in terms of your relationships and your health. Coping with stress and therefore processing our emotions is vital. So stress it's inevitable, right? Especially with technology, stress is there, and that's okay, because if we can have positive relationships in our life to help us cope with that stress, that's our goal. So stress isn't going away anytime soon, but if we can surround ourselves with that positive social support network, we can make it through these stressful days. And of course, this study found that social relationships are important, but with that being said, health is definitely not one-dimensional. And of course, still, your diet and exercise and avoiding things like smoking is nonetheless still important. So we remember that health is holistic, but now we know that not only is it about nutrition, exercise, avoiding smoking and what other factors, but it's also involving our social relationships.
Okay, excellent. Nathan, thank you so much for all of that information. We have a few moments remaining of our allotted hour, so we would like to take the time to answer questions. Again, feel free to add those into the chat section. We will answer as many as possible during our time now, and if we don't get to them, we will respond directly after the webinar. And of course, your questions don't need to pertain just to the contents of today's webinar. If you have any questions about the Zest Wellness program, feel free. Okay, our first question is about the quarterly team challenges. We have someone who wants to know more about that. Nathan, would you like to explain the quarterly team challenges that we offer?
Of course, Karen. So what's really nice about the Zest Wellness app is that each quarter, so 4 times a year, everyone who's enrolled is invited to a quarterly challenge. And so these quarterly challenges are almost like destination challenges, where they're massive step challenges with employees. And so everyone can sign up and you can register for teams. And what we find is that it's a nice team building experience for everyone, because you're competing and there's all the raw data there, the numbers, and people use their fitness devices to track their steps. So not only is it awesome that we're moving and whatnot, but it's really cool how it's also a positive workplace culture tool as well, because it's that fun competition that's going on.
Awesome. Yeah, our Q2 challenge just wrapped up. We were actually able to customize it and have destinations from each of Colonial's jurisdictions included. So that was fun for all of our members to get to learn a bit more about all of our locations. That's a great comment here. Someone has said, I find it tough attracting positive people in my life, but we'll work on that. So like Nathan said, it's really the quality of our relationships rather than the quantity. So, if you have that friend who's always bringing you down, it's not always the easiest thing to do. But sometimes you need to cut back on that contact in order to keep yourself in a positive frame of mind.
Yeah, Karen, I'll just jump in on that one as well. It's a good question, right? It's kind of like it's easy to think um, I'm not going to be nice to people because or why is it that that person has all these positive relationships in their life or how do they have why are their friends inviting them on trips? But what about my friends? Why aren't they inviting me on trips? And maybe it relates to that question: is it the chicken or the egg that came first, right? So is it that you should wait for people to kind of be nice to you and to do things for you, or should you be that person? Should you be that spark that kind of sets that tone? And it's kind of like be the friend you want to be. Um, but it's funny. It's kind of like you want to do positive things because positive things have happened to you, but it's a whole nother deal but a good deal and an awesome person who can do things positive first before the positive things have happened to them, almost like paying it forward. Um, yeah, those are just some quick thoughts on that.
Great, thanks, Nathan. Good suggestions. We have another question. What type of events does Zest Wellness offer? So we make sure that we're offering a variety of events year round in all of our jurisdictions to get our members together and establish that contact and share more about our program. We just wrapped up an event in the Cayman Islands this past weekend. We were able to host Dr. Deepak Chopra to share his The Future of Wellbeing presentation. So it was a really amazing session. He spoke to over 700 of our members in the Cayman Islands about what does it mean to take care of your well-being. Just really inspirational. So we were very fortunate to offer large-scale events like that, as well as smaller things like the Wellness in the Park, which is a quarterly initiative that will get our members together for something out in nature. So it might be a group exercise session. We might all meet up and go to a farmer's market. So just different healthy activities that can be done outdoors for a nice change of pace. Let's see. Okay, we have time for, I think, 2 or 3 more questions. Let's see. Someone has asked, can we get a slideshow of this webinar? This webinar has been recorded, and we will share that as soon as it's available with everybody who has attended. Okay, Nathan, I think this is a great question for you. Someone has said, what advice would you give to an older family member who has lost their life partner, their best friend? I often see a decline in health when this happens. Any suggestions you can offer?
Yeah, I mean, and much respect to that person who had asked that as well. The first thing I thought of when I just heard you saying that, Karen, is this past weekend on Saturday, I was at a wedding, a good friend of mine, and so at this wedding, my friend who was the groom, he 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 had two sets of grandparents, the one set from his mom's side, the one set from his dad's side, and the grandparent from his mom's side, so his grandfather was there alone because the wife had passed away in February of this year, so the grandfather was there alone, and I was just kind of thinking to myself when you're with someone your whole life and then that person isn't with us anymore. I could just imagine what that could do to someone mentally, and so which then, of course, as we know, could affect our health. But I'm not. It's not something that I can necessarily 100% relate to, but I think I can relate to because I'm human. I just can't relate 100% because I'm not of that older age or going through that. But if I was in that person's shoes, I think being with others and kind of getting out of the house is one of the best things someone can do. And so because aging and stress and whatnot, from my perspective, it's something that happens to all of us, but it's easy when we're alone to kind of drive ourselves crazy or to think we're the only person going through it. But if we can be just in the community, interacting and just getting out of the house in general, seeing the sun, seeing younger kids at the playground having fun, seeing people just and possibly even living vicariously through people, I think it's one of the strongest things someone can do, because it's too easy to kind of be by ourselves and just to get lost in our thoughts and to think that the whole world is crumbling around us. But meanwhile, if we kind of step outside, we can realize that there are millions and billions of other people in this world who are also going through tough times. And so our perspective of knowing that and getting outside and just being around others, I think can be a positive action.
Great, really powerful advice, Nathan. Okay, so we will finish with this one last question from Millicent, who says, my work keeps me so busy, hardly any time for friends or leisure activities. So what can we suggest for Millicent? So my first suggestion would absolutely be to join the Zest Wellness program, because it does offer solutions that are right at your fingertips within the app. It's easy to connect with your friends through there. It's easy to remind yourself with our healthy habit trackers to get out for a walk, make sure that you're getting enough steps every day, make sure that you're taking care of yourself. So even if you are busy at work, you're doing the work to keep yourself healthy, and you'll be able to enjoy that time outside of the office with your friends and family. Nathan, anything else that you would add there?
Yeah, and I think some of our listeners might get a chuckle out of this, but I think if you can kill two birds with one stone, and I think that's the best, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. So if you want to, let's say, so for myself, I like to golf, but I also like to hang out with my friends. But if I can golf with my friends, so if I can spend time with my friends who golf, so that when I'm with them, not only am I spending time with friends, but I'm also golfing, there I'm killing two birds with one stone. So if you have a friend and that person likes to, let's say that person likes to garden and they like to, constantly go to the store and buy new gardening supplies or new seeds. And if you also need to go to the store to buy that, if you can go together with that person, so you're getting those gardening supplies you need, but you're also spending time with that person, then it's kind of like you're killing two birds with one stone. Just like if you can golf, but if you golf with your friends, not only are you golfing, but you're spending time with your friends at the same time. Just like if you're going for a run, you're spending time with your friend, but you're also going for a run. So all of a sudden you're combining like spending time with others with exercise, with doing errands and that sort of thing.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that brings it back to the point that you made earlier about making the time for connections. It's easy to look at your schedule and say, oh, I'm too busy, but it's really about making the time, prioritizing your social connections.
Yeah, I think, and everyone's lives are different, and that's why Zest is amazing, because it actually brings health to people while they're at their workplace where they spend most amount of time. But I think if people can really prioritize and I think what you want, you do what you want to do. And so if someone really wanted to make time for this kind of stuff, I'd hope that they can. It's not easy, but we know that it pays dividends later in life.
Yeah, absolutely worth it. Okay, so we have just come up on our hour mark, and so we will go ahead and conclude our Zest Wellness webinar, The Secret to Health and Happiness. Again, I would love to thank you all for joining us. We will be sharing a recording of this webinar along with a follow-up questionnaire, so please look out for that in your inbox. And if you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to email us at zestwellnesscgi@colonial.bm, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Nathan, thank you again for this amazing breadth of information you shared today.
Thank you, Karen. It was fun. I loved it.
Okay, and with that, we hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.